Welcome to Rich Conversations. Today we'll chat with Ethan Miller. He actually does some stand-up comedy around the city, and he has a showcase this upcoming Sunday at Lincoln Station at 8 p.m. It's a suggested $10 donation at the door, and the proceeds go to Chicago Cares. So it's going to be a great event, and he's kind enough to come on the podcast with us, and we actually recorded this in his Lincoln Square apartment. You can follow Ethan at Ethan Miller Stands Up. It's a really clever social media handle. There's been some clever ones on the podcast so far. Mine's just at Rich Hebron, which isn't terribly original, but without further ado, let's begin. All right, so we have Ethan here.
Hey, what's up?
How long have you lived in Chicago?
So I've lived here, I was thinking about this one earlier. I moved up here in late 2013, like very early 2013. So like 6.5, almost 7 years. It's like, yeah, if I was applying for U.S. citizenship, 7 years is that's cool because I moved around so much as a kid that like I have such a like weird relationship with people being like, where are you from? And it's like, where am I from? I am 29 years old. Mm-hmm. I have had 25 addresses in 6
You've had 25 addresses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where before Chicago, where have you been?
So I lived in St. Louis before I moved up here, and then I was in Southern Illinois before that. I moved back and forth between St. Louis and Southern Illinois a few times. And then before that, we were just outside of Indianapolis. Before that was Schaumburg, suburbs here. Before that was Cleveland. Before that was I've lived all over the place. So I don't have a good answer when somebody goes like, "Where are you from?" Like it's
yeah.
So I always try to figure it out. I've almost at this point, we're like a year off of this being the longest I've stayed in one area.
So you obviously like it here.
Yeah.
So we're in your apartment right now.
Yeah.
What neighborhood is this?
So we're in Lincoln Square. We're like right on the cusp of Lincoln Square and Albany Park, which is a very like weird dynamic because Lincoln Square is a very like old German neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then Albany Park is a very Hispanic neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
And so like if you go like, half a mile east of here, you can find like these really good beer halls and all of this kind of like kind of fine dining restaurants. And if you go like a half a mile west, you can find like just like a 2-table restaurant that serves like the best tacos you're ever gonna fucking have.
Yeah,
just like right there. But yeah, like I've lived in this apartment for probably 2 or 3 years. Which now that you and I have talked about it, like that's higher than my average.
Yeah. Very spacious spot.
Yeah, it is great. And it's I've been here for a minute or two.
So if you have an open Saturday, how would you choose to spend it?
So right now, this one's kind of like a hard question because you and I know each other because we work at the bar together. So generally I'm working weekends at the bar. If not, like I also am a tattoo apprentice in the morning right now. So
you're a morning guy now.
I mean, morning isn't like noon, but I mean, it's still like the shop I'm at is in Pilsen. So like I'm up, if you're not familiar with the geographic locations of Chicago, I am pretty far on like the northwest side of the city. And then I'm driving pretty far to like the southwest kind of side of the city. So I usually spend about an hour in the car in the city going like 3 miles. That was the biggest thing that skewed when I moved here. My little sister moved to New York City. And we've had one of the first conversations we had is knowing how quickly your view of a distance is. Mm-hmm. Because when you're from like St. Louis is a very like suburb city, like it's a very like spread out kind of. There's not really like there's a downtown area, but it's like 3 blocks long, and then most of the time it's all just like neighborhoods and kind of suburbs. So you have to have a car, and so you have to be driving around. But if something's 20 or 30 miles away, that's nothing. Like you can be there in a half hour.
Right.
You have friends that live 30, 45 miles away. As opposed to here, if you told me that I needed to go 30 miles, it would take me like 2 days. like it would be like the Oregon Trail. Like we would be that's the kind of like stuff we end up doing. So, but like, yeah, so when I like think about it that way, it's like I spend like an hour in the car or on mass transit, and sometimes mass transit's faster, but just like, you know, just like sitting there and waiting. A lot of times I've taken to like using mass transit more just because I don't have to pay attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
you can zone out.
You can kind of zone out for a little bit and check in every once in a while on like stops especially because I'm going that far. But getting back to this question, I guess. So generally, even if I had like a night off at the bar, I don't know if I guess can we count because I'm still in the apprenticeship phase of this tattoo shop, so I'm like not getting paid, so that would not be like a day at work. I get paid if I bring a client in. Whatever, it's a thing.
If you have a free day where you don't have
anything to do,
anything going on that you're obligated to do,
that I'm obligated to do. So like I would probably, being in like the stand-up scene as well, I have a lot of, I have a ton of like comic friends. Everybody's always trying to like promote and produce shows on their own. That's part of the reason why I'm doing this, is because I'm producing a show at the bar we work at. So I'd probably pop in, hang out, see some of those friends, potentially try to spend some time with my girlfriend because she also has a hectic schedule. A lot of times if she and I are both off, it's expensive food. That's like we go out for like a nice dinner and spend a lot of money on food. That's kind of the primary place that she can spend money. Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think. It's been a minute since the last time we did that, so we're kind of overdue. But yeah, other than that, I'm trying to think. Like, I know you're more of a museum guy, and like I try to be, but my hours are not too conducive to museum hours. Most of the time, by the time I'm like thinking about going out and doing something, it's 5 p.m.
Yeah, and that's when they close.
Yeah, so not an early riser. That's I could be. I'm just not. I've been on.
You go to a number of Blackhawk games though.
Yeah, I usually. Whenever I can. I have one friend who has season tickets, and he has learned the game, which is if he tells me to give him dates of what games I want to go to, I'm never going to do it. But if he hits me up in the morning and goes like, hey, do you want to go to the game tonight? I will just Venmo him the money and take the tickets. So I do. I particularly like hockey, so I do like, we're starting off into that hockey season too, so I'm excited, even though I don't have super high hopes for the Blackhawks this year, but they could surprise me. You know, they've surprised a lot of people in the past. Who knows? A lot of times I'm just sitting in my apartment drawing too. Like, because of everything I do on like a day-to-day basis is so people driven. You know what I mean? Like, between like the bar and even if I'm, you know, sending emails and talking to clients at the tattoo shop, or I'm out doing all the stand-up stuff, it's so like, I just like have to be around people so much that a lot of times if I have a free day, like even today I had some plans get canceled earlier and then just kind of sat around all day. And I now I'm kicking myself. I should have went out and did some stand up. But like, you know, I mean, like it's the like I've been overdue for kind of a mental health day too. And 90% of the time when I'm here alone and I'm just kind of doing nothing like I was all day, it was if I'm not out doing stand up, I'm sitting there watching someone else's special, listening to, you know, finding clips online, whether it's somebody in our local scene that I know or somebody who's like a nationally touring act. Like, my brain is always working that way too. Or I was even talking about like, I'm trying to like monetize my like drawing skills, and that's still like a leisure activity. I don't know if that'll change the further I get into the tattoo industry, but it's definitely like right now it's still like, you know, I still have a good time just sitting and drawing. Usually now if it's for enjoyment, it's not, it might be like more abstract or more kind of like high arty stuff. Okay. As opposed to like if I'm working on client drawings, there's a tattoo style, you know what I mean? Like there's a, which is very like comic booky, which I think is how I ended up like segueing into it, is because I always like had a good time like drawing comic books and that kind of stuff. When you think of Chicago, what colors do you imagine first? I was like, this is the question I was looking at, that I was like, I don't know how to answer this. I'm trying to think like, we were talking. I mean, we were like talking about the hockey teams and stuff like that, and I always think of like red and black. I think of white because there's so much snow on the ground and it's so cold for so much of the year, and there's kind of, we're entering into the season now where it's like starting to get cold, and no one's really like upset about it yet. There's like everybody goes, it's the same thing every year. We spend all summer being like, oh, this is great, it's great, it's great, and then it starts to get cold, and everybody's like, well, this is nice, now we're not just like sweating all the time. And then it gets super cold, and everybody's like, well, it's like Christmas time, so it's nice. And then January rolls around, and we're all like, I need to move. Like, why do I live here? And then, like, March rolls around, and it's still snowing outside. And we're like, and everybody takes a vacation. And that's...
That's exactly how it is.
Yeah. And so, like, but I always think of, like, white... I don't know. I'm trying to think of like other things. I was just listening to Colin, and Colin had such a good answer for this one.
He did have a good one.
He had like a very interesting and introspective answer, and I don't. I just like don't have anything like interesting about it. I was thinking about the color red because I do think a lot of the places I end up like hanging out in like my free time, quote unquote, end up having these like. It's a lot of like red lights in like bars and stuff like that, and so a lot of times I'm sitting there like waiting in the wings to go up and do stand up or just sitting there grabbing a cocktail doing whatever, and it's just like we're all like bathed in this like weird flat red light. A lot of times in comedy clubs, that's why they light you with a red light, and so you can see it, but the audience doesn't really see it.
Okay.
Stuff like that. Which is a logistic things that I'm figuring out for this show. I'm producing my first stand up show right now.
So how often are like shows put on and produced?
Oh, we could find like 3 things to do tonight.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, if for nothing else, like Zanies, which is like one of the most popular comedy.
That's on Wells.
Is definitely has somebody tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who it is. Generally, they have more of like the club style setup. So you have a host, and he's like the opener, so he'll do a couple minutes at the top. Okay. You'll have a feature act who usually gets like 15 to 20 minutes, and then you'll get the headliner who does 45 minutes to an hour. And then the headliner makes the most money. The headliner then pays the feature, and then the host is usually like a house person. Okay. Those are kind of the first jobs you get in like the club scene, and they pay like $30 a night or something like that. Yeah. They pay like nothing. Like nobody, like you don't get paid to be a host, but it's always good exposure, and you're doing a lot of shows. Plus, on top of that, Laugh Factory has a show every single night. Sometimes they do like that kind of 3-comic host feature headliner kind of setup, and sometimes they do like more of like the showcase style show, which is what I'm producing with us. Is like 5 comics, we all get an equal amount of time. So I mean, there's 2 alone. I like if we're talking about like tonight, I know there's like an all-female show that's going on over at Cafe Mustache over in Logan.
Oh, okay.
I know there is.
So they do these shows like kind of.
Yeah, you can find
cafes and.
Yeah, pretty much anywhere, any space you can find to like have a setup, and I mean because it doesn't take much setup. I mean, like you have a mic and a speaker and 15 chairs you can do. I mean, there's a series of shows that I've done with, I've done fairly consistently, and they do it in their house. It's like in the attic of their house. It's a super fun show. It's more of a variety show. It's literally called Shithole because they like live in this like kind of it's not like this crappy.
So that's what it is. I see you advertising that.
Yeah.
And so I look up Shithole on Google Maps and I can't find it.
Oh yeah, so it's a pop up. So like, so if you're like interested, if I like say something about it and you want to come, just text me.
Yeah. Okay.
Because even I as a performer, it's like hard because even if I'm going up to perform that night, I don't know where it'll be until about 2 hours before the show.
Oh, okay.
So like sometimes the first one I did was those "You Are Beautiful" signs you see all over the city. Mm-hmm. So they have their like wood shop and main like shop is over on like it's like Elston and Belmont-ish area. It's like it's literally right across the street from Honey Butter Fried Chicken. And the first show I did with them was in that wood shop.
Wow.
Yeah, it played into my set really well. It went really, really well. And then every other one I've done has been at their house, and their house is on Elston as well.
Okay.
But they've done a lot of stuff with Shubas. They've done pretty much anywhere that like I had a friend who did one with them through like Empirical Brewing. They primarily do Sunday nights, but most of the time if you see a Friday night show, it's usually most of the time if you see the shithole guys doing a Friday night show, it's usually somewhere like it's usually a pop-up and they're going somewhere else. Okay. I've gone to the Cards Against Humanity theater that's over on like
I hear it's a cool spot.
It is a cool spot. It is I was not on that show. I was just there supporting. But it's a cool little like maybe like 75 seat theater.
Okay.
Which there's no shortage of those through the city as well.
What's your proudest moment as a Chicagoan?
This one was another interesting one. So I like our friend Alex runs a series of like, for lack of a better term, warehouse parties that are all primarily like funk musicians, and they like play these like 400 people play this thing, and I kind of half jokingly, kind of half serious, like volunteered to like MC a night, which would just be me. Like my plan when I initially thought about it, if everything was going ideally the way that I was thinking it would go, I would do a short stand-up set at the beginning of the night, and then I would bring bands off stage, bring bands upstage, take bands off stage. And our friend Alex, who I love dearly, and I know where his thought process was. His thought process was, why would I give you the worst time when no one's there? I'll give you the best time, which is right before the main act goes on. And so he was like, oh, I'll give you 5 minutes to do stand-up right before we go out on stage. There's an energy dynamic difference between somebody standing there and doing stand-up as opposed to somebody playing like loud brass instruments. And these warehouse parties tend to be pretty notoriously drunken. There's a lot of
rambunctious.
Yeah. There's always it's like if you distilled like New Orleans into like one square, like one warehouse for like a night, and then it makes them like a blast, and you can kind of do with it as you want. But there's a rule with stand-ups, and it's always, no matter what, you do your time. Mm-hmm. No matter what happens, fill the time they gave you, and if you don't do it, a lot of times you won't get booked by those people again. And so I knew I had 5 minutes, and I walked up there, and it went terribly. Like it went awful. It's not even like it wasn't like it wasn't like I went up there and started talking and everyone started booing me or everyone was like actively against me, but I couldn't hear myself out of the monitors.
Okay.
The room was so loud. All the 5 people of the 400 that were in this room that were listening to me all told me I did a great job, but 395 of them were like, it was so loud. It was so loud, and I couldn't hear myself. And despite the fact that like I knew no one would care, and I knew no one would notice if I just ripped the cord and just got the fuck out of there, I sat and did my time. Yeah. Like I filled the full segment that I was supposed to. And I like immediately went into the green room and drowned licked my wounds and drank a bottle of whiskey. It was not my like, it's kind of weird because it was like not like my proudest moment as a comedian, but it was definitely this kind of like, it was like, that was the moment that I knew I could do this. Okay. Like that was the moment that it was like, all right, you can survive a bad night. Like it's going to be fine.
Yeah. And now you have like a great story to tell about like, when you
I have a recording of it, and if I like played even just a little bit for you, you'd be like, what? I can't. The recording from my phone in my back pocket. Yeah. You couldn't hear me talking.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. But it's good. It only makes you like hardens that armor.
Yeah, and
you can't have everything go right every time.
Yeah. I mean, we all want to. Like,
oh yeah,
like,
sure.
If I could, I definitely would. But yeah, that was kind of like an interesting moment, and I do kind of wear it as like a point of pride at this point. Like, looking back on it, I was like, you could have pulled the cord at any point, and no one would have cared. Like, no one would have noticed, no one would have cared. But it was just it was more like myself and internally. It was like, no, we're going to stand here and we're going to do this. We've volunteered to do this. It was the first paid gig I'd gotten. Alex paid me for my 5-minute set.
Nice.
And it was, it was what it was. Yeah. Like I wasn't. Would I volunteer to do it again? No. If he approached me and asked me if I would want to do it the way I initially talked about it and more or less emceed the night and kind of like kept energy up, I feel like I would do that in a heartbeat.
If someone were to visit you from out of town, what restaurant would you take them to?
As I was talking about earlier, like my girlfriend and I do like kind of splurge on food. It's kind of like the most. It's where all of our like disposable income comes into. The place that I always end up taking people is because everybody wants to do pizza, so I always end up taking them to Pequod's. But left to my own devices, there's a Au Cheval always hits that small list. There's like a smaller kind of more upscale place just down the street from here called Gather, and it's a little farm to table place.
Oh yeah.
If you've not eaten there, I highly suggest it. It's everything I've had there has been amazing. They make like a ravioli, but it's like a raviole because I think ravioli is plural.
It's raviole.
Yeah, so it's like one big one.
Okay.
It is one of my favorite fucking foods in the world. Like
Really?
I love it so much. It has like a full egg yolk in it. It's so good, and I feel like every time I go there, we end up ordering more and more of them.
Nice.
Like it's like you know what, everybody needs 2 this time. And it's also surprisingly like, you know, I mean, you sit down at a nice restaurant and you go like, all right, I kind of roughly know how much this is going to be at the end of the night, and every time I do that, it's $50 less than I think it is.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's always like because we're out in a neighborhood, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we were downtown, it would be.
If you were in like River North, that same raviole.
It would be you know, and my girlfriend and I do tend to order everything on a menu. Like we will just, and if we don't eat all of it, we don't eat all of it. Like it's kind of a nice. So like that ends up being kind of one of my like go-to spots if I have. I took the last people who came up and visited was my parents, and we took them to Au Cheval.
Okay.
And that was mostly. I love my mom dearly, but she's a very picky eater. She's not the pickiest of eaters, but she's not very adventurous, and so burgers and fries done up. Nobody's gonna complain about it. Always worth the wait, or you go late and you don't wait, which is what I've done a couple of times. You go like 11 o'clock, like right before they close.
Ooh,
Nobody's in
nice.
there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, I mean, if you want to eat a giant burger and then go lay down and go to sleep, so I mean, it's your choice really.
What's your hidden gem in the city?
I was actually a bar you turned me on to. It was the Victor Bar down here on Lake Damon and Irving.
Did I originally tell you about that?
You and I were talking about bars in this because you don't live very far from here. You are in like North Center, and so you and I were talking about kind of random places that we've like been to. I think we were talking about like date spots, something like that.
Okay.
And you'd like brought it up, and then that same week, one of the owners and his then girlfriend found out last time was in there, now wife, had come into our bar and was sitting there talking to us, and they were like, "Oh yeah, stop by, we'll hook it up or whatever." I was like, "All right, cool," and I stepped in, and it's like very close to home, which is nice. It's a very good like it's like a great cocktail bar that is kind of undiscovered. Like not a ton of people know it's there. And then if we're going for food, there's also a Korean barbecue place that's up down the street here as well.
Oh, Chosunok.
Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. Another one of those like surprisingly cheap. Every time I go, we pay like $20 a head. Yeah. It's BYO, so you can show up and grab whatever you want and but it's delicious. You know, those are kind of like those hidden gem spots. And then honest to God, if we're talking about like the comedy stuff, I like highly suggest if you haven't like followed the shithole Instagram and just like go to one of their shows. It's a very like positive, fun room. Okay. And it's not all stand up. It's not. I mean, they will book pretty much. The only way that they won't book you is if they book you once and then you say a bunch of racist shit on stage. Yeah. Like if you are like just like wildly problematic, they're not going to book you again. But if you come up and you know. If you come up and even if you get up there and bomb, the room's always very supportive. It's where I've gotten most of my clips that have submitted to other places.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, which is why if you like watch them, you're just kind of like, what is in the background? It's like it's because I'm in an attic that's maybe 3 inches taller than I am.
Which is tall.
Yeah. But it's such a fun supportive room. I've seen so many like off the wall acts there. The one time Jen, our mutual friend, came, this guy played "My Heart Will Go On" the accordion, And it was
Wow.
one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. Just like little short dude in a vest, like mustache, playing "My Heart Will Go On" the
That's
accordion.
Wow. Those are things you can't.
Yeah,
it's hard to experience that like outside of
Yeah.
the city where there's like not a community.
Yeah,
to
there's just
do
like, and
something
there's
that.
like not enough people. Even one of the times I was on one of those shows, I was talking to a guy who he'd driven down from Appleton, Wisconsin to be on the show, and his like entire family showed up. It was hilarious because it was like it's like 85-year-old grandma as as they were doing this like if you show up in the house too, it's like one of the guys who I don't know if they own it or rent it or whatever. One of the guys who lives in the house is like a studio artist, and he does this like kind of these really cool like kind of funky paintings, and they're all up on the walls, and they have like communal places that everybody like draws on and all this stuff, and then you have this like 85-year-old bald white guy sitting up front just like scowling at everybody. But you know, he and I were chatting before the show, and I was kind of like, what does the scene in Appleton, Wisconsin look like? And he kind of looked at me. He was like, "Oh, you know, it's getting pretty good. Like, you can hit like 2 or 3 open mics a week." Which, in our comedy community, I hit 2 or 3 open mics a night.
Yeah.
If I'm going out, like if I go out, I will hit at least 2, if not 3 or 4, because you're getting 4 or 5 minutes of stage time. So, if you're trying to build these bigger sets, or even if you're just like working on stuff and trying things out, you hop from one place to another and you go back and forth.
All in the night.
Yeah. And then the hardest part of all of it is just like waiting. You like get there and sign up, and there's 10 people in front of you, and that's an hour. And so you're just kind of like sitting there like, well, cool.
What sound do you most affiliate with Chicago?
I'm trying to think about it. A sound, probably, there's such a haven of horn driven music in the city that I feel like that's probably like that roarous like trumpet, trombone, that kind of like driving kind of, and maybe it's just like the circles we've associated ourselves with, but I feel like just Chicago is in general is like, even if you go into like if you go into like the blues clubs, there's always somebody who's like playing a saxophone in the background, or you know, even I can't tell you the last time I like went and saw a show that was like a local band that didn't have like a horn player in it. And that's not normal.
Even if like you go to coffee shops and the background music will have like horns. Like,
yeah, it's a very like it's like brass instruments are like in the like water, like in the soil of the city. Like it's like a very like, and that's not even, I mean, even coming from St. Louis that also produced a bunch of like these like blues and jazz like guys through the years, it's not the same. There's not the same dynamic, you know what I mean? Like you don't see that like style of music really being like showcased in pretty much any other than outside of New Orleans, really. I haven't seen it in like any other city.
You think New York has it, or?
I think you can find it in New York. The thing with New York is I feel like New York is a place that you can find anything.
Yeah, that's,
you know what I mean?
true.
Like, as opposed to like it is something that is like integral to the city here. So like you don't have to go searching to find someone playing like jazz or blues or whatever here. You would have to go find it in New York.
What music then has influenced you the most during your time here?
I mean, it would, and honest to God, I was always like kind of drawn to like horn-based instruments, but not in the same like sense. I've like definitely grown an appreciation for that kind of like New Orleans style like jazz and funk. Also, in the time that I've lived up here, I've definitely gained an appreciation and become much more attached to like the like kind of new age hip hop scene. A lot of my favorite artists at this point are all like kind of the chill wave rappers, like the kind of like very like low key, kind of almost weirdly transient beats. I'm sitting here in this Open Mike Eagle sweatshirt. Saba is one of them.
Okay.
That kind of, it's always very good. For me, it's always good music to create things too. So I sit and draw with it.
Oh yeah.
It's, you know, if you sit and listen to them, they're saying very important things. But if it's just on in the background, you can like let the beats kind of like sail you away, and kind of your brain can kind of clear, and then you can like work on whatever you're working on.
Noted.
kind of that like kind of that movement that was really started with like Jay Dilla.
Oh yeah,
That kind of like backbeat and like mixing style has definitely like gained some popularity, and that has definitely for me probably been the things I listen to the most, and probably been more influential on, especially when I'm saying they're working on kind of like more abstract stuff.
Cool. What's a common scene you see in your daily interaction with the city?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of like, I mean, just being in like all of like the service industry stuff, I see a lot of like temper tantrums being thrown. but then on like the flip side of it too, I see like a lot of like connecting. I'm trying to think of like the best way to put it. Like, I see a lot of like friendships forming and stuff like that. You see a lot of people like, and yeah, we all know that like most of the time you're 5 beers in at the bar and you start talking to the person sitting next to you and you're never really going to talk to him again. But there's something like kind of positive about that in general.
There's like a camaraderie.
Mm-hmm.
If you were given secret information that Chicago would be destroyed in 1 week, what's one quality you would choose to keep to rebuild the city?
There's a saying that I've heard from a few. It's like kind of it's kind of a popular saying, but I've heard it from a lot of like artists in general, and it's the idea that you go to New York to get paid, you go to LA to get famous, and you go to Chicago to get good.
Ooh.
That's like you like hear that kind of statement. So like that kind of mentality that it's not about getting like specifically like, I mean, we have a ton of musician friends that are kind of this way too, and it's not about being like the most famous person in the world. It's not about being a multimillionaire. It's about like doing your art as best as you can. And while this general scene tends to like then export people to New York or LA to then make them wildly famous or wildly rich. There's something about that mentality that like even when we were like talking about this show that I'm booking, I got some bigger names that I didn't think I would get just by asking. I'm not paying anybody for the show. We're donating, like we're taking donations at the door, and we're going to donate it all to charity. But the fact that these guys are even like would even consider it, just like coming to a little bar on Sunday night and doing a set for people just to have more stage time is like a mentality I don't think you'd find in New York or LA. Like it's not a big enough name to be like recognizable for LA, and it's not going to pay well enough to make you want to come and show up and do it in New York. But like I have people that are definitely higher up the chain of the scene, and people that most likely will end up on one of those coasts in the next few years, just kind of being like, yeah, absolutely. Like, okay, man, 2 beers and a meal. Sure. You have somebody like taking a video for us. Great. That's better than what most people offer us.
Yeah.
And that kind of mentality, I feel like you don't find. I mean, you might find it at some kind of like some smaller cities. I feel like the Pennsylvania, like Pittsburgh and Philly kind of had that mentality, but there's kind of nothing. We're in this like weird balance. You know what I mean? Like there's enough arts and a scene here to keep people here and attract people here, but it's not enough to like pay everyone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to like put it in like the right way. Like, if no one's getting paid, nobody notices. And so like, we're all just like out here working our day jobs and then going and doing things we love at night. Like, that's what it's kind of all about.
What's one small thing you would do to improve your neighborhood or the city as a whole?
I feel like every like, there's such a like always a specific demographic for every like neighborhood in the city. Like I was talking about like why is there a German section of the city? Like I wish we were a little bit more like integrated in that way. Like a little more like, why is it that once you cross the river it becomes Hispanic? Like I understand that will kind of naturally happen, but like in my ideal world, like wouldn't all of these things be everywhere and we would all be like accepting of whatever? And I don't know. Sometimes it bothers me, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, obviously no one's standing, nobody's standing in a neighborhood telling me you can't live here, but like, But like there are like kind of institutional reasons why that those kind of things don't happen too. So that would be something that I'd like if I could just like magically snap my fingers and make it go away. You know, this is like one of those like Miss America pageants. Like, what would you live? Racism.
When people learn you're from Chicago, how do they respond and what's your reaction?
The only one I can think of is I was talking about my little sister moved to New York, and I was out there for her college graduation probably 2 years ago or something like that. I don't even remember how long ago it was. And I was just like sitting there talking to one of her like classmates, and his first response was like, "Oh, Chicago, gun violence and Kanye, and you guys all praise Kanye West." And I was like, nobody praises Kanye West anymore. like never, like we all like listen. All right, like we like him as much as the rest of the country. Like it's not like, it's always gun violence though. Everybody like even my friends who live in St. Louis that has a higher murder rate treat coming here like they're coming into a war zone.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, like the per capita rate in St. Louis is substantially higher. Like your odds of being murdered in St. Louis are really high. I'm gonna find it interesting because I was talking about this not too terribly long ago. So like if you look, all of like the early '90s like gangster mobster movies were all set in New York because New York in the '80s was like notoriously violent. And then through the 90s, all of like the riots and things were happening, and there was a bunch of racial tension in LA. And so through the 2000s, we got things like Training Day and all of these like LA-based like gangster films. And now I'm wondering what our run of crime films are going to be like. I mean, we've even like we're starting to see it. You know what I mean? Like they remade the Death Wish movie and they placed it in New York or in Chicago, and they did Steve McQueen, not the dead one, the director, not the actor. Did that Widows movie with Viola Davis and I think that name's wrong. I'm gonna double check this one because it's gonna bother me, and I don't want you getting all the crazy tweets about it. Widows was the name of the movie, with Liam Neeson and it was Viola Davis. But that was all set, and actually that one I feel like had the most interesting. Of an overall pretty mediocre movie, like it's all right, like it's worth watching. I would definitely. It had one of the more interesting ways of processing like kind of the dynamics of the city, because it's following this politician, and he gets into his limo, and the camera is mounted on like kind of the front right bumper, and so you can kind of see the like reflection of everything off of this black car. And they're obviously having this conversation, and it's him going from this like, this like rally in this incredibly poor neighborhood, and it's all like a one shot. It's all shot in real time. They're having this conversation, and you see that they only drive maybe like 6 blocks, and then he gets out of the car and he's in his mansion. And like that's kind of, it's such a like a weird telling thing about the city, and I like that those are kind of the interesting things, and I'm like interested to see what this like run of like crime thriller movies will all be based out of here. And then what's the
so
next
we're not in that movie scene or in it yet?
I mean like I think it's like just starting to happen. I think we're starting to see like the front, like the very tip of it, and I think we're gonna.
So then at a certain point that will end, and then
I'm curious to know what the next
city is.
Yeah. Like, do we find out there's I don't know, like Miami, Florida. I don't like what's the. Maybe they do go to these. You know what? I know what the next one is gonna be. It's gonna be Detroit. Detroit will end up being like the one that like, because Detroit is gaining that reputation, and it's kind of, I mean, Chicago is starting to kind of, you don't hear about it as much, especially from when like in the time that I've lived here.
Yeah,
we have a lot of politicians talking about gun control and how it doesn't help in Chicago, and I'm not going to get into that one because I have very strong opinions about it. But it is what it is.
When you feel stressed out or overwhelmed, you need a mental escape, but you can't leave the city, where do you go to clear your mind?
So over the winter time, I do tend to go into like Laugh Factory. But I know like a lot of this is just like, I am a complete comedy nerd and I love it so much, and I do, and whether I'm going to support somebody I know or if I'm just going in to sit in and watch a show, just sit and hang out in the back and watch and just sit and laugh, like, you know what I mean, and sit there and go like, I wonder what I would have to do to book that girl. And then I never, you know, like, I don't even know them. I don't even know people who know them, you know. I mean, most of the time I know people who know them, but I don't, you know, I don't know, I don't have any like distinct connections to them. But then over the summertime, I have a motorcycle. It's usually, I don't usually just bum around the city. That like 2 a.m. like a run from like the bottom of Lakeshore up to the top is it's super fun. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's on the road. You can kind of go as fast as you want. I'm not gonna. I definitely had a moment that I was on my bike and I like looked down and it was doing a little over twice the speed limit.
Yeah.
It was unintentional, I'll be honest, but it happens, and that's always like kind of like you get some like wind in your face. This time of year is actually kind of perfect for it because you can kind of layer up a little bit more, and then you can get out.
Yeah.
And the bikes tend to run a little bit better when it's just a little bit cold. You get more grip on the pavement too. It's a thing.
Is it really?
Yeah. It's like a thing. It's like I didn't know it until I was talking to somebody who like does drag bikes. And they talk about like a 55, 60 degree day is better than like a 90 degree day.
I would have thought the opposite.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I know it's a thing, but I don't know why. Yeah, those are kind of. I've played the game of get on the bike and race the sunrise to Wisconsin, which is always a fun one. But that's getting out of the city.
That's true, but that's still a good one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you try to get to the up to the lake, but on like kind of just on the Wisconsin side, and then you watch the sunrise and you ride back. It's fun. That's a night that I'm definitely not sleeping, but I have massive sleeping problems, so it happens all the time.
Huh. What's something you're curious about recently?
Curious about? Interesting. That's such an open-ended question. Should I like pull up my Google list and see what the last thing I like Googled was? Because I definitely. Or like the last interesting one, the one that's not like. You and I were talking about the Wrigleyville Mansion or the Wrigley Mansion.
Oh yeah.
We're talking about boxing weight classes. I'm trying to think. Man, I have a lot of boring, just like the same things over and over again. But it's always it's open mic lists, what's going on at the venue next to our bar, that kind of stuff. We were definitely talking about might qualify actors that you don't think of as like overwhelmingly attractive, but like really were like when they were younger.
Oh yeah.
It was because we were watching Roadhouse, and I was like, you know what, I kind of get why like what's his name, Patrick Swayze. Talking about Patrick Swayze, we were talking about how like I get why he was like, other than the weird haircut, I get why he was like a sex symbol. I'm trying to think of the more interesting. We were talking about Marlon Brando for a minute.
Brando, yeah.
Marlon Brando is like the go-to one where you like think of him as like puffy faced Godfather, and then you like look at him in like Streetcar Named Desire, and you're like, damn, that dude was like ripped up.
Yeah.
Betty White, surprisingly attractive when she was
Babe.
young. Yeah, like complete babe. I don't know if this is something I'm like super curious about. Like I'm trying to think of like, I mean, I have so many things going on in my life that are so like, I mean, in the last 6 months, I've been like, I could sit here and bore you to death talking about like the fine tuning of like tattooing.
Tell me something about tattooing.
So there's a big trend going on right now that's all about like, people refer to them as like single needle tattooing, and the name is kind of a misnomer because you can find someone who might be doing a single needle tattoo.
What does single needle mean?
That would mean it's like very fine. So like the amount of needles you have in like a cluster dictates how thick the line is. Okay. So like imagine, if I was using like a 9 needle liner, that's kind of the equivalent of using like a Sharpie. And if I use like a 3 liner, it's like a fine, like those like fine felt tip pens. Mm-hmm. And so like the trend now of this like fine line or like single needle is these like very fine lines that create like a very minimal piece of like tattoo artwork. One of the guys I work with specializes in that. But the misnomer comes from the fact that almost no one is using just one needle. The smallest ones you normally buy are 3, and they're arranged in kind of a triangle.
Okay.
And the reason why you can't just use one needle is that there has to be a space between the needles for the ink to sit, or it's not going to draw out.
Okay.
So you can make a single needle, but it is still built out of 3 needles. It's here again. Could bore you to death talking about all of the stuff that I've like learned how to do this.
Do you notice that there are different styles of tattoos that are more popular right now? What are some of those?
The big one right now is the geometric shapes. Everybody wants something that's very like there's like this the Hindu body painting.
Oh, henna?
Henna. Those kind of style of tattoos are very in right now.
Okay.
Like those you'll see a lot of those kind of like these kind of dense geometric shapes that are like tattooed onto people that are usually round, and they kind of everything matches. That's a very like popular thing right now.
Okay.
That's kind of the most popular one, and it'll be like left to seen. It's substantially better than when I first started getting tattooed and everybody was getting tribal tattoos. Tribal tattoos on white guys are just terrible. Like, just stop. Just don't do it. When The Rock does it and he does his like Polynesian ancestry, it's really cool. But like, don't do it. The guy, like, you know, now you see those like 45-year-old guys with like the barbed wire armbands, and you're just like, what a douche.
Oh man. Within the past 5 years, what personal realization has improved your outlook on life the most?
I feel like I'm a lot more confident in myself. I think I'm more confident in my own like abilities. I don't know if that's something that's like a self-realization. But I actually, I guess the self-realization would also be like, I have the thing I've learned kind of the most in the last 5 years, which I don't know if it's specifically tied to the city or more just like me going from my early 20s to my like late 20s, early 30s.
Probably a combination of everything.
Right. Is kind of knowing when I'm outside of my depth.
Okay.
Like, and being able to like just express that, you know what I mean? Like not having, you know, knowing that no one's really going to like, you know, if you're new and you're doing something you don't really know what you're doing and you're trying to like figure it out as you go, no one's going to judge you for not knowing what you're doing when they know you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like when you're like in there to like learn something, no one's going to get like mad at you because you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And so like being able to use that to just kind of openly say like, listen, I don't like, can you help me with this? I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Realizing there are people with other kind of like more specific skill sets that may help you do something or may be useless to you. You know, you don't, I mean, I feel like I'm not really answering this question and I don't really know how to answer this question correctly.
I don't think there's not a
Yeah.
perfect answer. It's just like, what's something you learned about life in general that you're...
Is that you don't have to have all the answers all the time. It's kind of the short one. Like you can be learning. You don't have to like, I spent a lot of my like teens and early 20s being like, this is the path and we need to get to X spot as fast as we can. And I really like burnt myself out a lot doing that. And it's not been really conducive to my life as a whole, as opposed to now. And I think it's partly because I did spend a few years of those 5 really like without really a sense of purpose.
Okay.
There was a kind of a long period of time that I was trying to like figure out what I was going to do, what the steps I was going to make, where I wanted to be and what the steps were to do that. And kind of the only regrets I've got now is that I didn't like know what I wanted to do earlier or give more things a shot. I feel like the more that I like didn't know what I wanted to do, the more kind of I tried things out. It was, you know, I'm interested in this, see if this works. And I feel like if I would have tried that 5 years earlier, I probably wouldn't be sitting in the same spot I am now, but
such is life.
And that's like like if you start beating yourself up over that kind of stuff, you're just going to drive yourself nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, as much as I was like, you were always a little comedy nerd. Why didn't you like start trying to do stand up when you were like 18? And now it would be, you know, a decade into it, and who knows where I'd be or what I'd be doing. But after that, I'm just kind of like, I also probably wouldn't have been. I did not take rejection too well when I was 18. It's also a big part of the reason why I tried to do the tattoo thing when I turned 18, and I kind of had a very like limited view of like what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And when that didn't like work out exactly that way, I just kind of scrapped it. I was like upset, and my ego couldn't take it. And so I think maybe, you know, when we're talking about what ifs and this kind of stuff, it's like, what if I tried stand up when I was 18 and I would have failed, and then would have thought, well, I suck at this, so I'm never going to do it again.
That's true.
Or the kind of persistence it takes to end up in a tattoo shop too.
So what's something in the future that you're excited about or you dream of doing?
I want to play a theater show. I don't care if I'm hosting it, opening, or headlining it.
So what would a theater show, what does that mean?
So like the Chicago Theater downtown. It's like a 3,000 seat kind of arena.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, it's a theater. It's not really an arena, but like it would be like that kind of like big room where when you sit down and you watch like a Netflix special, when they like reverse and you see all of like that, like I want to play one of those rooms. And that's also why I feel like leaving that kind of goal of like I would like to be on one of those stages. Like I don't care. Like ideally, obviously, I would like to be headlining it and shooting my Netflix special in one of these theaters. Right? And there's not, especially when you're going out and you're like really trying out material and like trying to book shows and do all this stuff. Like it's like impossible not to sit here and think about like, if 10 years from now I get to shoot a Netflix special, I'm going to choose this city. I'm going to come back here and I want to go to this theater and I want to like talk about, I want to take them to the first place I got on stage, and I want to talk about this kind of place and that kind of, like all of that kind of stuff is always floating around your head. You're constantly like writing your own autobiography and figuring out how you're gonna like eloquently be charming when you talk about it. But I feel like that's
that's human.
Yeah, and that's like if you have a desire to do something in the arts or in entertainment or something like that, you like, while you may not sit here and like, it's not going to drive me nuts if I never get famous. Like I'm doing this because it's fun, and maybe one day it won't be fun anymore, and then maybe on that day I quit. Who knows? Like, but on the other side of it, nobody's going to turn down the rich and famous lifestyle. Nobody's going to turn down having like, thousands of people interested in what you're doing. So your brain kind of naturally wanders there. And trust me, especially with the comedy stuff, there's a lot of ego checks to kind of put you back in your place. Whether you're talking to a room of 400 people who aren't paying attention, or you're talking to a room of 10 people who should be paying attention but absolutely are not, are sitting there quietly just like waiting for you to like tell a joke, and you're like, oh, but I wasn't that. I was trying.
Yeah. This should be exciting on
November
3rd.
3rd. It's a Sunday night. It'll be at 8 p.m. We're donating everything to Chicago Cares. It's a charity that's fun fact, I didn't like reach out to them and talk to them at all. I'm just going to donate the money to them because in my experience, and I've talked to a few other like producers, and they're like, the second you get the charities involved, they start telling you what acts you can and can't do. And they're like, but they will never turn down the charity money if you just do it and donate it. So we are not the group of comics I have are not representative of the charity, but the money that we raise there, we'll donate to the charity. It is not a ticketed event. We are asking for a $10 donation at the door.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Rich Conversations. Again, you can follow Ethan at Ethan Miller Stands Up. Make today a marvelous day.